Alright, this time I'm going to show you how to make the actual graph. So for this, I actually only want these numbers here and these numbers here. I currently don't care about these, but you can't just delete them because these numbers rely on these numbers. So we're going to have to get a bit tricky. It's not too difficult, you've just got to be careful when you click. So starting with these 5 numbers, I'm highlighting them all. And I'm now going to highlight these 5, but I can't just click and take them because see how it unhighlights these ones. So let's try that again. This time when I'm clicking on it, I'm going to hold down Command if I'm on a Mac or Control if I'm not on a Mac. So hold that button down, click and take them. And now see how I've got both sets of numbers. Now this is going to be a line graph because we have numbers. On Excel they call it a scatter graph. Okay, there is an option called line graph, but it's not what we want. So this is what my graph gives me, which is getting pretty close to what I want. There's a couple of issues with it. It's missing a lot of labels, and notice how my axis starts at 30.5. That's not okay. So I'm actually going to make this full screen so that I can get more room basically. First thing I'm going to do is fix this axis. So I'm going to double click on it and you get all these options. See how it says minimum 30.5, same number that's down here. I'm just going to change that to 0. Let's see what that does. Ta-da! So now it starts at 0. Let's add some axis titles. So remember, chart design, add chart element, axis titles. I need both of them, so I have to go in and click both of them. Now I can always check back here to see what this thing actually was. So these are the hundreds, so this must be the thrust. Remember, I always need units, so thrust, and that's in newtons. Again, I could write it out, or I could just do that. Then these numbers refer to this, so I'm going to go maximum height rocket reached, and I measured it in meters, so I put a little m in meters, and then I'm going to call this something relevant that kind of tells people what I did. So I'm going to call it thrust on water bottle rockets to reach maximum heights. Something like that. So I've talked about this thing, I've talked about this thing, and I've also talked about like the experiment that I did. So that when someone looks at this graph, they're like, oh, that's what that's about. Alright, one thing missing is my trend line. So see how they kind of line up? Well, the trend line just proves that they line up. So I'm going to put a linear trend line. Oh, look at my nice wee graph. So just getting a little bit ahead of myself, but we'll just say it anyway, is I can now look at this graph and say, as I apply more thrust to my bottle, its maximum height gets bigger. So that's just giving you an idea of what your conclusion could be. So now that is going to copy and paste quite nicely either onto your OneNote or onto your Word document.